Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody. Joining myself and Mikey McCubbin today. He's back. Chelsea's biggest fan. One of the legends of the content game, Matisse Broderick. Matisse, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. I'm just slightly recovering from the mayhem that was the derby at the weekend. And then we got another brutal match, obviously, tonight. Obviously, whenever this drops, you'll know Leeds Chelsea. So it's going to be a rough week, but I'm looking forward to it all.
You must have taken so much confidence from that performance against Barcelona and Arsenal, though.
Yeah, massive. I mean, we always kind of perform in big games, I feel, under Maresca anyway, especially at home. I think the real test will be how we do away from home, which we've got a lot of travelling to do back end of the season against a lot of these top teams, but the crowd gets up for it, the tactics are spot on, and yeah, the players are always up for it, so yeah.
Well, let's see. It's a big month for every Premier League side, and it's a big month for all the title contenders. And at the moment, it does feel like there is a title race going on. Let's see what's happening by the end of this month. But we are today going to talk about signings to win your side the title, looking at Arsenal, City and Chelsea, because being realistic, it doesn't feel like Liverpool are probably going to be in the title race this year. Me and Matisse are going to suggest one signing for each of those three clubs. Mikey, sporting director today, he gets ultimate say about which transfer gets approved. Let's kick off, because we've got you here and because Chelsea have a reputation for always pulling a rabbit out of the hat in terms of a transfer as well. Let's kick off with Chelsea, Matisse. Your thoughts on this January? Do you think you'll be active? If they were to sign someone, who do you think it would be?
Well, this is going to be my selection, not necessarily what I think the club will do, because you know the club, they have this cap with the 25-year-old rule. They always go for players below that. Do I think we're necessarily going to go for someone? I think we're in a kind of sell to buy option situation where we do need to move players like Disasi on, Sterling on. You could even maybe throw a Tosin into the mix if you think we've got too many centre-backs. And I think Chelsea, obviously with UEFA restrictions as well, we saw last summer, they do need to get players out the door, and we saw that they could never bring anyone in without moving someone on. So I don't expect us to be proactive. I don't expect us to be kind of the first ones to bid and to be ahead of the queue. We do have to get rid of players, and then we'll see what gaps are in the squad. But in saying that, if it was me, I would love to see Mateta come in. And I watched him at the weekend. I actually went to the Palace v United game, and his hold-up play...
Doing a bit of scouting, Lee.
I had to. His hold-up play and his strength is so good in terms of you can really play off him. Obviously, we see the goals. He's got like 7 goals this season. We know that he can finish aerially. He's a threat. On the ground, he's a threat. And it's not necessarily thinking, he's going to come in and get 20 goals for Chelsea. But I think what he could do in terms of hold-up play and facilitating space for everyone around him as well, and taking that to the next level, I think would be incredible. I think Delap's hold-up play sometimes a bit questionable. He's obviously still young. João Pedro doesn't really take a lot of shots. We kind of got a lot of strikers right now that are kind of in between. They've got some really nice attributes, the pair of them, but they don't have the full package. And I feel like Mateta's a lot more closer to the full package that you need as a forward. Maybe wouldn't cost the world as well. We get into that age where he's kind of in his prime. Maybe there's some thinking at Palace that maybe you could move him, get someone in younger to kind of get the profit in there. I just feel like, I remember when we had Giroud, and a little bit different to Mateta, of course, in terms of the not as fast in behind, and maybe the link plays maybe a little bit better, a little bit more deft touches, but that really was a really quality signing for us. It led us to trophies, and it brought the best out of players like Hazard, and I think someone like Esteval would flourish with someone like Mateta.
What happens to João Pedro in that situation, though? Because obviously he started the season so brightly at centre forward, of course had a great Club World Cup as well. I feel like that would maybe take the wind out of his sails a little bit. I guess maybe Cole Palmer, you can't rely on his fitness so much, but yeah, I'd feel for him a bit.
It could do. I think there's still a confusion as to what position João Pedro should really play in. Yeah. When Cole Palmer comes back, maybe João Pedro does become this striker again that takes his chances, takes more shots. Maybe there's more of a telepathy that with those two that we saw in the Club World Cup. But without Cole Palmer, he hasn't really been a striker. I'd say he's been a facilitator in terms of, yes, he drops deep. He's had good performances, but even on the weekend, there was a moment where he had loads of little touches and he just couldn't quite get it out of his feet to get that shot off. And I feel like that's something that we can't really afford to have. And at Brighton, he played a lot in the 10. Yeah. So he plays as a shadow striker a lot of the time. As a 9, his shot volume at Brighton was very low as well. His goal tallies have always been quite low, heavily reliant on penalties. I think he's a really good ball striker. I think he has the potential to shoot well, but he never takes the shots. So I think there's a case to be made that he just becomes one of the 10s with Cole Palmer, and someone like Mateta is up there with Delap, and then that's the way you kind of make it work.
You mentioned there about the signing policy of really targeting youth and players 23 and under, etc. how frustrating is that from a Chelsea perspective when there are areas of the squad that you feel like could really benefit from a bit of experience? And do you think that this is just the long-term strategy? They're never going to bend from that?
They're not. No, they're not going to bend. I think it's very much geared towards, lower wages maybe as well, lower price points in terms of just really trying to unearth the talent and then make a massive profit margin if that player doesn't quite make it at Chelsea. The longer contracts as well. You can't really offer a longer contract and spread out as much with the maybe late 20s, early 30s as you can with the youngsters. And I think it is a business strategy. It is their strategy. And some people will point to the downfalls of signing older players like an Aubameyang, but there's also Thiago Silva. There's also Giroud. So it depends on, again, it's all about your scouting. It's all about doing your due diligence, understanding the personality. Sterling didn't work out, but did he really need to come to Chelsea after winning everything at City? Was he really ever going to kick on after starting his career at 17? And then now in his late 20s, was he really going to improve or get better? Was he going to start to plateau, drop off? So I think there's so many factors that come into it when you're signing older players. Ballack, I remember, was on a free. I think he was like late 20s, 30 years old. There's so many cases of where it works, and it is a bit of a shortcut to getting closer to the trophies and competing. Whereas with youngsters, there's inconsistencies. You've got to kind of gradually develop them, and that's the way we've gone down. So it is a bit frustrating at times because I feel like there are opportunistic moments where you can get like a Guirassy, for instance, at Stuttgart. He was like 17.5 million. We spent 17.5 million on Washington. I was like, come on. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it is what it is. Yeah. Sometimes it works. You get Esteval, so you have to take, I guess, the rough with the smooth a little bit with it as well.
Absolutely. I think Mateta, in a different way to Sterling as well, would see Chelsea as the kind of pinnacle of his career so far. I know he's now playing for France, but I mean, in terms of his club career, definitely.
Yeah, wants to play the Champions League.
Yeah, and maybe it's a possibility for next summer. I do think the arrival of Emmanuel Emega as well next summer from Strasbourg. I'm not sure you're going to look in the striking department in the next 2 windows at least. I think you're going to try and give Delap a little bit more time as well because he's obviously had a few injury issues, a couple of discipline problems as well.
So where are you looking at, Deeks?
Well, I kind of found Chelsea surprisingly difficult actually because I would normally go goalkeeper, centre-back or striker, but as I say, Emega is arriving. I think at centre-back, Wesley Fofana's actually played really well since coming back from injury as well, and you're not going to want to long-term replace Levi Colwill just yet as well. Obviously, Chalobah I think's had probably a pretty good last 6 weeks or so. Achimpong's still there as well. And then I feel like, if you're not going to go for Mike Maignan in the summer, you're definitely not going to sign a January goalkeeper. They clearly want to give Penders a go as the first team goalkeeper. So actually I went in the position that I thought I'd least look at, and that was actually in midfield, because I don't know whether we need to start, and it's brutal because he is still so young, but Romeo Lavia's fitness has been really, really unfortunate for him and for the club as well. Because whenever he's played, I think he's been brilliant. Asugo's obviously been out injured as well. Andre Santos has actually shown, I think, a lot more promise this year than he did on a lot of his loan spells, aside from that one at Strasbourg last year. So clearly there's a player there as well. But you do need to slightly take the workload off Moises Caicedo. I don't think he can go through this rate of games for club and country week in, week out. And that's why actually the one benefit for his suspension at the moment is he does get a bit of a rest for the next few games. So I do think you need to slightly take the workload off Caicedo and look potentially beyond Lavia. I think he's missed close to 80 games since joining from Southampton, which is just an absolute nuts amount. And I looked at the profiles in Chelsea's midfield and I thought, what do they most miss? And obviously they've got so much physicality, they've got so much aggression, they've got so much quality in terms of deep range passing as well. Enzo Fernandez can do that. They've got box crashing with Enzo Fernandez as well. Caicedo can literally do it all right now as well. But I wonder whether they miss a little bit of that metronome at points just to calm the game down. And I wonder whether they could have a look at someone like Angelo Stieler from Stuttgart. Strongly linked with Man United in the last few months as well. It does feel like Man United are looking at Baleba, Wharton, Anderson, Stieler as well. Real Madrid have been interested in him. And it's not really surprising because Stuttgart aren't no longer competing at the top end of the Bundesliga this season. He should be more achievable to land. He's broken into the Germany national squad. And this year, less so this year, but last year in particular, in terms of passes into the final third, progressive passes, his creativity, he takes set pieces, absolute wonder of a left foot, brilliant controller of a game in terms of tempo and areas to attack as well, and would feel like a nice mix-up from a Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. Look, do I think Chelsea will sign anyone in January? Probably not. Do I think they'll probably look at a central midfielder potentially next summer if Lavia still hasn't managed to get fit? Maybe.
Yeah.
And then I was also thinking winger, but then Quender's arriving. He's played very well at Sporting CP. Emega, when he's been fit, for Strasbourg this season has done very well. So I think it was a little bit surprising that I went down this route. But I do think Stiller is a
really
kind of
surprising.
profile that Chelsea lack.
It's just so difficult because we're talking about trying to win a title, and it's like who can come in and really elevate this team to take it to a title-winning level? Because even in midfield, James just had a masterclass.
Yeah.
There's a case to be made that he just stays there now. You know, he didn't lack anything in his game. Enzo, Caicedo, like you said.
Would your dream midfield right now, before Cole Palmer comes back, that's just James playing alongside Caicedo?
I just want James on the pitch. If I had James on the pitch, I'm blessed. I don't mind where he plays now. But that midfield performance was eye-opening because Declan Rice is there and we're 10 men, and he's just,
Bossed it.
He's just bossed it. He's running past players. He looks agile. He looks, kind of fluid. He's not playing with an injury in his head anymore. Andre Santos had great performances against Barca and Burnley as well. I have high stocks in him. So it's really challenging to think of who can come in and just instantly win a league. And that's why I was like, okay, maybe even if Mateta doesn't start, off the bench maybe just gets you those late goals off, in the air. It's difficult though.
You do have a very complete squad.
There's a lot of players.
When Colwell comes back from injury as well, that centre-back area, Fofana keeps his form up.
It's not as bad as people kind of... Even Badia Shield, when he plays, good performances. So, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I feel like, you're pretty deep across the squad. I think, the winger situation still worries me a little bit at Chelsea in that we're yet to see anyone... stake their claim as starting every week. And I do still think Chelsea lack that consistency in the forward line. I see where you're coming from with Steeler. I think he's a wonderful player, but I do feel like whatever his next move is going to be needs to be at a club where he's going to be
guaranteed
the midfield linchpin. And yeah, like Matisse was saying, Reece James I think has been a bit of a game changer, like actually playing in midfield this season consistently. And yeah, I just think Chelsea are stacked, like Andre Santos as well. Enzo's going to be moving deeper now with Cole Palmer coming back into the side. I just don't see a place for Steeler in this team. Whereas I think with Mateta, although again, it's not Chelsea's policy.
No.
I do just see that if we're living a little bit in dream world here, which we kind of are because we don't know how much business is actually going to be done in January. But if we're living slightly in a hypothetical where it comes to January and Chelsea are really in the hunt. And they're like, what?
We can win
this could. We're going to make one exception and sign someone who can move the needle a little bit. Yeah, I look at Delap and I look at João Pedro as the striker. Neither of them. I mean, Liam Delap, unfortunate because he's had so many injury issues since coming to Chelsea. But I look at both of them like, are they a Premier League striker who's going to win a league in a competitive title race and going to make that difference? Not necessarily. We haven't seen the evidence from them. Whereas Mateta really does give that forward line something that they don't have. And in theory, I think could be someone who starts consistently and gives them, gives Cole Palmer, gives someone like Pedro Neto, someone to bounce off on a consistent basis. So yeah, I'm going to go with you.
Go with Matisse.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Matisse.
What I would say is I feel like Palace fans will be like, this is very hypothetical, and also if they're going to lose Mark Gehi next summer or in January potentially, I think next summer's far more likely.
Yeah,
they're probably unlikely to lose Mateta as well.
But I mean, his contract's up in 2027. Like, if it's not in January, I mean, I don't think they will sell him in January, but I do expect something to happen with Mateta next summer.
Either a new contract or
and Palace Palace have sold all their stars. I know, again, Wharton. If anything, I see Gehi leaving, Mateta potentially leaving. I actually could imagine a world in which Wharton stays for another season at Palace.
Still only, 21?
Still only 21. Look at what, Declan Rice was being touted for a huge move from the age of 2021 at West Ham. He ended up staying there. He ended up completing a good 4 full seasons as one of their top players before moving on to one of the big boys. I can 100% see that happening with Wharton as well.
Especially because this could be his first full season at Palace without any fitness issues as well.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully. I mean, we're all hoping that so he can go to the World Cup.
Yeah, whereas I think Mateta, it's kind of now or never to get that big move. And I think he's, in some ways he's easier to replace because Palace just need to get the next young thing in. Another option I thought for Chelsea at centre forward, who would be a lot harder to get, but in terms of someone who guarantees you goals in the Premier League right now, Igor Thiago could be a could be a good option, especially as someone who offers you something different if you want to, if you say you need to go long in games or whatever. That we've not seen Chelsea do so much in the Prem, but certainly in terms of the way that Premier League games seem to be unfolding this season, Igor Thiago's just really cut out for that. But yeah, Mateta takes it.
Fair. I would rather see a bit longer from Igor Thiago, to be fair.
Yeah,
I mean,
same.
I know he's had an amazing 6 months, but that's an interesting one. I feel like Chelsea and Mateta potentially moving there as well feels very tied into Oliver Glasner's future as well. You saw him at the weekend complaining about their lack of transfer business in the summer.
Yeah.
I wonder whether he's a little bit frustrated, whether he leaves. I think he's out of contract in the summer as well. That could free up a move for Mateta as well.
Yeah.
Okay, Matisse is 1-0 up. Let's talk. Let's talk Man City, actually, because there have been a number of reports that they are actually looking to do potentially some business in January. There feels like some actually clearer holes in their squad than Chelsea. I think that's probably fair to say. I think most Man City fans would agree with that as well.
Yeah.
Who was your suggestion for Man City?
This one was tough because there's a few positions at City that I feel need rectifying. I still am not convinced at right back. Matisse Nunes feels like you're plugging a hole, but he's not a proper Kyle Walker replacement. I think they wanted Livramento. That never materialised, maybe too much money. Midfield, I know Gonzalez has been improving. Reinders, really good the other night. But again, with Rodri out, maybe there's something there. But I've actually gone wide into the wing positions because I look at the wide players and I just don't see Man City level consistency and output. And I think they're very reliant on Haaland. And obviously Mamouche is meant to contribute, Cherki, Foden, but they're all kind of central players. I think there's room for someone decisive on the right or the left. And I'm going to go with Ndiaye at Everton. I think he's a baller.
Yeah.
And I say that as a compliment, but also a concern that he might be a Grealish. He might be a player that goes up to a Man City and it may be the system and less maybe touches or less importance that does derail him or does take him down a notch. But sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I feel like I don't want to get too Grealish kind of down that road where it's just guaranteed this won't work out.
I mean, Grealish would be in his ear, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
If a move to Man City came along,
Grealish
he
would
would
give
be
him
telling
advice.
him what the situation is.
I saw him play on the left last season. It's very exciting. Obviously, Grealish comes in, Dewsbury Hall. He vacates to the right a lot this season, and he's been still just as impressive in terms of his dribbling, his 1v1 threat, his box crashing. He gets some goals there, here and there as well. Left foot, right foot. I just feel like he's a more polished version of what they already have in certain players. Like Semenyo, I think probably needs to leave. He doesn't have any output to a Man City level. Doku, for as much as he's had really good big games this season against, you could say, Arsenal, etc., I still feel like the output there is questionable. Good assist the other night. And yeah, I look at the wide areas and I'm not fully convinced. I think he would come in and improve them. I think if we're talking about going for a title, is the right back going to win you a title? Rodri comes back, centre mid, I'm not sure. But wing, I think that is the position that could change them, game changer for them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a strong shout. Are you looking in a similar area, or have you gone somewhere else?
I didn't, just because I think Semenyo is an interesting one. They probably are slightly regretting turning down that interest from Spurs in the summer. They felt like they could have got a sizable fee for him as well. I do think Doku's been really impressive this year as well.
Yeah.
But I didn't look in the forward areas. I actually looked in midfield because Bernardo Silva's time at Man City is probably coming to the end in the next 6 months as well. Kovacic has been injured so far this season as well. He's 31. Rodri is turning 30 fairly soon as well. I think next year as well. Will he ever get back to the Rodri of 2024? Hope so. He's an absolutely phenomenal player to watch as well, but he'll be 30 in June. So they definitely do need to start looking beyond in their midfield options as well as I think Nico Gonzalez has played in the last 5-6 weeks as well. Reinders definitely had a very good game the other night as well. But I think Elliot Anderson would be a sensational signing for City. And interestingly, Man City are one of the 4 clubs that he follows on social media as well.
Oh, you've really done your research there, Dukes.
Which is an interesting side point as well. But he came through, obviously, at Newcastle. Newcastle would have loved to keep him, but because of PSR reasons, he gets sold to Forest. I remember people, particularly online, putting up their nose, really. I think it was £35 million he cost. And there was Vlachodimos going the other way. I think it was one of those PSR deals, etc. That now looks like a sensational deal because he was brilliant last year. He played every minute. He's played every minute so far this season, but last year he was absolutely vital as well. He ends up with 6 assists. I think that was only topped by Elanga and Gibbs-White. Forest, of course, finishing European places. This year has obviously been chaos at Forest in terms of going through, they're onto their 3rd manager. But what I like about Elliot Anderson is you look at who he's learnt under already. coming through under Eddie Howe, there's that physicality, there's that intensity that he's already worked under. Nuno, much more reactive, much more counter-attacking. He's had a spell, 40 days worth under Ange, where I think that's affected his possession stats this year as well. Like his deep ball progression, his progressive passes, his pass into the box are through the roof. And then you're back to Sean Dyche and also breaking through under Tuchel, which is going to give you so much tactical instruction as well. I feel like he's had a fantastic grounding for a player who's still coming into their prime right now. And is pretty experienced and hasn't really had too many injury issues either since breaking through so far. And he looks likely to start at a World Cup. That's only going to increase his value significantly. And he's got 4 years left to run on his deal. I think he already looks like a 70, 80, 90 million pound midfielder. And I don't know whether City could go there in January. And Forest are, I think they'll get clear of relegation. But if you lose Elliot Anderson in January, that's a huge loss. I mean, this guy is through the roof in terms, I think he's in the top 3 in terms of passes completed, passes into the final third, progressive passes in the entire league. His defensive output is through the roof as well. His dribbling through tight spaces. He can literally do it all. He feels like a one-man sort of Swiss Army knife. And I think he is the player to go for. And eventually they will have to take the plunge because you're losing potentially 2 players of Kovacic, less impact at Man City, but still being a useful servant, and Bernardo Silva, an absolute totem of their best times. They're going to have to get the checkbook out again. And I do think they've made some mistakes in midfield in the last few years. You look at Matheus Nunes, has never really played in midfield for them. Look at Calvin Phillips. How easy is it to forget that they spent over £40 million on Calvin Phillips? I think he's only ever started 2 league games. So they need to rectify those mistakes. And what we've seen in the last few windows is if you make mistakes in the summer, you have to do it in January, which is why they had to go get Nico Gonzalez in January. And which is why I think they might have to get Elliot Anderson as well. And Elliot Anderson coming in and hitting the ground running at City in a Rodri-less Man City, I think it does get them a lot closer to Arsenal this season.
Where do you see him fitting? Who makes way for him in that midfield? Because, I mean, it feels like Foden now ever-present, like back in amazing form. Reinders, again, probably hit and miss, but he was a big signing in the summer. Can really, dominate games when he's on form. Do you think he comes in Nico Gonzalez's position?
Yeah, well, that's the great thing about him is this sort of change of roles and changes of different managers over the last few years. He's played in basically as a 6, as an 8, and even kind of as a 10 at different points as well, and can do a range of those roles. I think he comes in and would be instantly better than Nico Gonzalez as a 6, and I like Nico Gonzalez. I think he'd be better than Tajani Reinders in that 8 role as well. And then you're looking to play Foden or Cherki potentially in front of him. It feels like those two will probably rotate more as the season goes on. But I'm with Matisse. You definitely look for more impact from that right wing, but you could potentially move Foden out there, although he has played so well centrally this year as well. But it just feels like he is the answer to so many issues in midfield, and any tactics you're coming up against, he feels like a great answer for them.
Yeah, this is really tough because I do think actually both areas that you've identified are areas of need for Man City. I think compared to Arsenal and Chelsea, where there seems to be fairly steady depth kind of across the field, City, the right hand side has been an issue. I think especially with Savio dropping out of favour under Pep, because I think there were really good signs in his early days at City, but it hasn't happened for him this season.
Oscar Bob as well.
Yeah, Oscar Bob hasn't kicked on in the way that we would have thought as well. The fact that Bernardo Silva's been playing so much out there is a little bit of a worry. And someone like Ndiaye, I think he's great. We've seen links with Semenyo as well. Of course, has that £65 million release clause that's I think runs out after the second week of January. So I think there's going to be...
Really, it's timed to halfway through January, really?
Yeah, I think it's so that Bournemouth can
find a
replacement if they do sell him.
Yeah. I know what we'll be talking about for the first 2 weeks of January.
He'll be there in every video. So I look at that and I'm like, if City are going to do business in January, I can see that as a market opportunity, especially his versatility as well, can play on the left. If they want to give Doku a break, because he's played so many minutes this season as well.
Some people prefer Doku on the right as well.
Yeah, and when he's going into more central areas as well, where you can cut in a bit more. I think Doku's been great this season. I've really, really liked him. But I do think, I agree. I think that right-hand side definitely needs work. I do love Elliot Anderson, though. And I just think City, whether or not they get that right-hand side sorted, whether or not they bring in an elite Premier League winger on the right, I don't know how many more goals they score. Like Haaland, first, quickest player to 100 Premier League goals. He's done that so easily. Doku and Phil Foden now chipping in with more goals. I feel like, I think City are the top scorers in the league as we record this. We're recording this before the Arsenal and Chelsea games, but I don't really worry about City's attack this season unless there's a big injury to Haaland, in which case, getting in a right winger isn't going to make up that much ground. I just think City's attack is still flying, whereas, as we saw in that Fulham game, they're really susceptible to being really passive, especially in that kind of midfield area where you think, you saw, the likes of Iwobi just running riot in the centre of the park. And, in years past, that Pep team is, everyone's tracking back or they're not beating the first press. And Elliot Anderson is so good at plugging gaps. He's so good at tracking back, so good at breaking up play, and then also great in the first phase of build-up that, he just does feel like a real Man City signing. Do I think City will do it in January? Probably not, because it's hard to get star players out of Forest, as we saw with Morgan Gibbs-White in the summer. And
Mr. Marinakis will be there on the pitch.
It's just a lot of... I would not want to see what the fallout would be among Forest fans and Marinakis if that move was to happen in January. But that's where City can improve massively. And I think, like right back again, like you say, is a bit of a problem position. But I think Pep needs to trust Kusanov there. I do think for half a season, Kusanov can plug that gap, at least defensively,
decent,
quite well. I'm not convinced by Mateus Nunes there at all. And I think O'Reilly's good enough in the final third to make up for whatever you miss if you had Kusanov at right back. But I think Anderson would be absolutely brilliant. I think the only thing is I'm not sure whether you would play him as the lone six, but even if Rodri came back, you then got even more legs in midfield there. Is Rodri, we're yet to see Rodri over a 3-4 month period since this injury. Like, is this going to be the same Rodri of old? We're not so sure. Because his physicality is so much a part of his game as well as his technical ability. Elliot Anderson takes it for me.
1-1. Going into the final club to discuss in this title race. It's the leaders as we film this. No, they will still be leaders no matter what happens tonight against Brentford. Matisse, let's chat Arsenal. Firstly, you saw them up against your own club on Sunday. I don't think they were at their best. I don't think you allowed them to be at their best either. Do you still think Arsenal, no matter what happens tonight, are very much the strong favourites, or do you feel like it's a much more even title race than people necessarily thought maybe a month ago?
I think they're strong favourites purely because I think their depth is this is the most difficult signing to try and find, because really they've left nothing on the table in the last summer just gone. They've plugged every single gap, every hole. They've had injuries
Their
this
backups
season.
have backup.
Yeah, literally. You look at the centre-backs, you're missing 2 starters. Last couple of years, if Gabriel and Saliba are out, that would be panic stations. They're bringing in Hincapié and Mosquera, and to be honest, the only reason why there was a bit of a struggle is because that's the first time they've played together and there's a lack of maybe chemistry, understanding. But they're 2 very good players, and if they were to play together more often, I'm not expecting them to have problems back there. You look at Madueke coming in, you look at Eze coming in, Odegaard's been out, Madueke's been out himself, the strikers have all been out at the same time, and they put Mikel Merino up front. So the depth is ridiculous. However, from watching that game and watching them this season, and Trossard's been very good. And Martinelli, I think, has improved. He had a really poor couple of years, and now he's started to have more impact, whether that be off the bench, running in behind Bilbao. But if you're just to elevate one position, just elevate it, I think Semenyo at left wing. I was thinking even Leao over the summer, maybe a Rodrigo. I just keep looking at that left wing, and Trossard is in his 30s. Martinelli's still inconsistent, or is maybe better off the bench. And it was very heavily down Saka, Cucurella. We know Eze, Odegaard's in the middle. You look up front, they've just signed Gyökeres, Havertz. They're not going to sign a striker again. But the left-hand side, I just think, can be elevated. And Semenyo's having a great season in terms of output. I do think he's had a couple, maybe games where he's dipped a bit, but I think that happens with wingers like him. He's very heavily, involved in Bournemouth and everything they do in terms of beating your man, taking people on. Some of the goals he scored this season, ridiculous in terms of just going through players and cutting in. And I think he's on that trajectory where it makes sense for him to go to somewhere like Arsenal, where now you're coming into your prime, you want to kick on, you're playing with better players, you're going to get the ball. I think Saka needs someone to almost dovetail him a little bit, where you're not always going to Saka constantly, and he's getting doubled up on, or he's having to always create magic. I think if Semenyo comes in and balances out that left-hand side, it actually creates more space for Saka and more space for Eze in the middle, because it's like, who do you mark? You can't leave Semenyo free. He's going to absolutely kill you on the 1v1, and you can't leave the other guys either. So I think it just balances things out a bit more. And yeah, I think Semenyo for me is the one. And like you said, 2 weeks. You got 2 weeks in the window
those first 2
to
weeks
trigger
in the
that 65 million. Yeah.
I mean, luxury signing Semenyo. Have you gone down a similar route, Dukes?
I did, yeah. I actually weirdly considered, well, I don't know whether it's weird, I considered a third choice striker, because they've got Gyökeres, they've got Havertz, but you made the very good point before we started filming, like Mikel Merino's played so well. Like, do you really need a third choice striker? Just thinking, is Gabriel Jesus really ever going to become even a semi-regular player in this side? Probably not. And then I looked across their midfield options with Diamond and Wanyeri and Lewis Skelly coming through. But at both fullbacks, they're very deep as well. They've got a solid backup goalkeeper. It was really difficult. And to clarify, the player I'm going to suggest I don't think will happen in January. I'm not even sure it would happen next summer. But the following summer, Trossard and Martinelli are out of contract at the same time as Gabriel Jesus. So next summer, they might, well, as in summer 2026, they might be looking to sign a left winger. So I do think me and Matisse are looking in the right area. There's been speculation around Kenan Yildiz. I think that costs a lot of money, and I think he'd want to guarantee to start. I also think he's quite similar in profile to Eberechi Eze. In fact, I think he's more of a 10 playing out wide, and I would want more natural winger. And you're basically looking at trying to sign, particularly if it's for next summer, someone in the 40 to 60 million pound range that could become the next Bradley Barcola or Nico Williams, or someone. Even Williams actually hasn't played that well the last 18 months or so, but get it to that caliber of level that can grow with this side. And actually, interestingly, just before we started recording, Florian Plettenberg of Sky Germany came out and said that Arsenal were looking at Bahoya from Eintracht Frankfurt, who's a young left winger. They signed him from Angers. He's in his second season there. He's actually been a bit more of a bit part player there, but it does suggest that Arsenal are thinking who's the next Martinelli, Trossard, or who's the guy that's going to take that position onwards. I think they should look at Jan Diomande from RB Leipzig. He was signed in the summer from Leganes. They activated his €20 million release clause. And classic Leipzig, they were clearly ahead of the curve on this as well, because he'd only played 500 minutes for Leganes in La Liga last season, but had really shone in those minutes. He was completing over 4 dribbles per game in a Leganes side that were not particularly entertaining. And he was definitely like the sort of flame, as it were, in that side, or the most entertaining sort of reason to tune into them. And since joining Leipzig, he started 8 of their 12 games. He actually was mainly on the bench and then has become a regular starter. He's already got 3 goals and 2 assists in the league. And his numbers are really, really impressive. His shots on target have doubled from 0.5 last season to over 1. He's now taking over 2.5 shots per game. His dribbles are exceptional. No one in the Bundesliga has completed more dribbles. And given he's started 8 of 12 games, he's up against someone like Michael Olise. And in terms of Michael Olise, he's second to Michael Olise in terms of carries into the box, progressive carries into the final third. This is a guy that can play on both sides as well, which Arsenal seem to like with the likes of Madueke, etc. I think this guy will probably be a 50, 60 million pound player in the next 2 years. So jumping ahead next summer, when he's had 1 year at Leipzig, and it would potentially be quite a raw addition to arrive immediately. And we've seen other Leipzig players like Nkunku and like Timo Werner. You know, Matisse has been scarred by a few Leipzig sales. But I feel like Arsenal is the kind of right environment where he wouldn't necessarily have to come in as I think he's 20 now, and be expected to start week in, week out in the Premier League, because there is so much depth in those forward areas now. So before he costs £80 million in 2 years' time, maybe sign him for 50 next summer. But for January, I think it's a bit early.
Yeah, okay. So you've not given me a January signing to win Arsenal the league.
You could go for him, and you know, it would make a bit of a difference. Personally, I actually feel at Arsenal, in terms of their squad, they don't need anything. Yeah. To be totally honest, I think what will be harder as the season goes on is keeping everyone happy.
Yeah. That is my worry a little bit. I think my reservation with Diomande as either a January signing or even next summer is just how does a young player come into this Arsenal squad and actually make a difference when Trossard's in good form, Martinelli's been, used relatively sparingly, but has a good goal record this season.
Might play out there a lot now. Odegaard's back.
Yeah, once Odegaard's back, as they can play that, it's really tough with Arsenal. And equally with Semenyo, does that upset the apple cart a little bit? Like, how does Madueke feel when you have someone coming in who is, I think, performing at a slightly higher level than Madueke? certainly this season, and can also basically do what he does in that can produce quite similar performances on either wing, quite two-footed. Does that see Arsenal kind of breaking the contract with Madueke in terms of what was promised to him or what was, told to him about his role in this squad? That is my one worry.
You've got a bit of a dilemma
but
here,
if I've got to choose both, and I think when I think about Arsenal, and also do Arsenal have £60 million to spend in January? I'm not so sure. Is there any way that they can offload some of the players who aren't really featuring in this squad to make that up?
Quickly on that £60 million, I was reading about it this morning. Hincape's deal is a loan, but either Leverkusen or Arsenal can pull the trigger that they have to pay them.
Okay.
So Leverkusen could be like, we need that £45 million next summer. But by all assumptions, Arsenal want to pay that as well.
Yeah.
But that's already £45 million from their budget.
Yeah. I just look at Semenyo and I think it is going to take that kind of player to go to Arsenal. I think they're I'm not saying they're done with the developing side of things, but I think they're at a point now, like you said, where their squad is so serious and it's so geared towards Premier League, Champions League, winning trophies. It's going to take someone of that quality to come in and have any impact, because I think anyone below that level, they might just suffocate in terms of the minutes, because you can't really blend in young players when you're trying to go for major titles. It's kind of like everybody's developed now, 100%. Everybody's kind of already matured and we're going for it. And I think you would have to probably sell a Martinelli or someone like that if you were to get a Semenyo. But
I mean, at least in the long run. And I expect one of Trossard or Martinelli probably to leave next summer, if I'm honest. I know they've both performed well this season, but I think there's going to be a point where, there needs to be a little bit of proper renewal out on the left. And it's not even just this season. We've seen players like Fabio Vieira come into this Arsenal team as a young hopeful and not cut it. So it's not like it's not like anyone could just come and develop in this team like they did in the early Arteta days, where he still didn't know what his best lineup was.
I wonder whether on that actually they'd probably rather lose Trossard because he's so much older than Martinelli. Yeah. But actually, the money you'd get for Trossard probably wouldn't really be worth it.
Get anything for him.
And then what's the potential? It's an interesting scenario because how much does Martinelli cost in today's market as well? Because obviously high potential player, but fits and starts over the last few years. I know he's been a lot better, as Matisse says, this season, but it's an interesting scenario.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you look at the money that Bayern Munich paid Liverpool for Luis Diaz, right? That feels like a kind of benchmark of where a Premier League level player needs to get to cost that much money from another European side.
But there aren't
that many teams of the calibre of Bayern Munich who don't have their left wing position sorted already. So it is a bit of a dilemma. Then again, I think Arsenal stand to make a profit on him anyway.
Yeah, because, that's for sure.
But nevertheless, I'm going to go with Semenyo. I think
for January.
For January, I think there's a market opportunity there. I think Man City will be interested in him, but Semenyo's an Arsenal fan, importantly, and I agree with Matisse. I think you need an elite Premier League player to come in, and as available attackers in the Premier League go, Semenyo is easily the most elite in terms of what you can get this January. And I think, yes, Arsenal, are favourites to win the Premier League, no matter what the results of Wednesday night, how they pan out. But they're also going for the Champions League this year. I think this is a real opportunity for them to win the Champions League, because when you look across Europe, I think it's difficult to remember a time when the other elite teams around Europe were so gettable. Look at the Chelsea performance against Barcelona the other night.
Real Madrid, very unhappy camp.
Yeah, when you those teams. I think Bayern Munich are probably the outstanding ones, but even Chelsea gave them a good run back in September, didn't they? So I think Arsenal are arguably on form the favourites for the Champions League. You're fighting on all fronts, still in the League Cup, FA Cup coming up in January. I think one more edition wouldn't hurt Arsenal, and an elite edition at that.
Greed.
It's marginal gain.
It is greed, but you have to be greedy if you want to go for all those titles. Look at the squad building we saw from Man City over the years under Pep Guardiola. That's kind of the model you have to follow. Liverpool managed to do it less so under Klopp, with a bit of a thinner squad, but then that they had an amazing, one of the best forward lines ever. Like Arsenal don't quite have that privilege of having 3 world-class players in the forward line who are just like completely symbiotic.
Yeah.
Like they have to kind of work with what they have. And Semenyo would 100% upgrade that left wing.
On that, Matisse, does it sort of worry you seeing this Arsenal squad and seeing, we're talking about who they potentially signed this January, next summer? Does that worry you? Or do you feel like, as a Chelsea fan, that there is so much belief in what Moises Caicedo already is and what he could become, and Estevao in particular, like the excitement around him, deservedly so? Do you feel like Chelsea are in a position, even if the next couple of windows go perfectly, to challenge?
Absolutely, with the top players we have. But I think in the wing position, like you said, I think there's still gains to be made in terms of the quality. They're looking at Gittins and Garnacho to develop. But when you're going up against Arsenal, if they were to secure Semenyo, you're now looking at their entire starting 11 and saying that is a bunch of grown men playing at their peak and providing a base level that, we can't necessarily provide on our flanks on a consistent basis. But when you have Cole Palmer, Reece James, Colwell coming back, Wesley Fofana, if he can stay fit, the level that he's been able to produce recently has really, again, reminded people why we spent the money we spent and what he did in his debut season at Leicester, how he could potentially break into that France squad. I think that the possibilities for him are there if he could, but he has to be fit and consistent. With Estevao, there's enough top players there. You have to have hope, and I think Arsenal are getting to a point where they can't really get much better. Like we've kind of spoken about trying to add to that squad. That left wing is the only orange position. I think the rest of them are greens. You can't invest that kind of money on Gyökeres and not make that a green. I think with Chelsea, there's still enough room for elevation and improvement, but we are getting to the top end here now, where it's like, guys, these are your squads, and that's it now.
I mean, that's the thing with Chelsea. Like, is it a case of recruitment, or is it just a case of
time,
playing wingers into form? I think that's my frustration with Chelsea, is that we just don't get to see. It feels like, I feel like Neto's been the most consistent starter of the wingers this season, but I feel like across the last 2-3 years, I've never got to see someone play out wide for Chelsea and actually get such a consistent run that they can actually get that rhythm and reach the level that they can reach. That's my worry with having Gittins and Garnacho there. They're both kind of at similar levels, but then Enzo Maresca will want to play them for different games because of their stylistic differences and the fact that the calendar's so big. But you kind of want to just see one of them play 5-6 games in a row. Otherwise I feel like it's going to be hard for either of them to get to that elite level.
Chelsea have got Quenda coming in, like you mentioned. They've got so much talent. Stapov, I think, in Kazakhstan, third youngest Champions League goal scorer, I believe. And then maybe that record may have been broken by Carl.
What happens with Kenda as well? Because he's going to be playing presumably on the right and cutting. Well, he can play on the left as well. But
he's been playing on the left a little bit more recently for Sporting, but I saw him personally as a right because I thought there was a nice playmaking, passing kind of style to his game, which kind of reminded me a little bit of Elise. Not to make that comparison, but his reverse passes, his kind of awareness to play making, to create. Obviously, he's added some goals in there as well. I think Man United were looking at him for a wing-back position under Ruben Amorim, not so long ago. So he seems quite positionally versatile and high IQ, hopefully, kind of player. Obviously, we've seen Leroy Sané's type players play on the left before. But when you've got just this amount of talent just coming in all different positions, the only thing that will stop Chelsea is, are they constantly always developing a few too many? Is a few too many constantly always in their debut season? And then there is going to be trials and tribulations that come with that. Whereas with Arsenal, if I'm right in saying they don't really need that anymore, they've done the project, they've done the developing, they've done the improving. Now it's just adding in.
Win.
Yeah, win. And once you get winning, there's no stopping you necessarily. You could just win and go back to back, and
Sure.
and they're just older and more mature constantly and more winners. So Chelsea have to get that line right, where you're not constantly putting in people into the squad who aren't ready to go to that next level. Whereas some of them clearly are. Cucurella, Caicedo, Palmer, so many more.
Yeah, it does definitely feel like a tipping point for Arsenal these next, well, I'd say even this season, but particularly next season as well, if they haven't got over the line on one of these big titles. Some of those big name players, particularly like a William Saliba or someone who doesn't have ties to England, surely they'd be considering their futures at the club because they are so close. But it's just about getting over the line as soon as possible. And maybe Semenyo in January would be the ticket. I personally don't think that will necessarily happen, but he's won the competition for today. I don't think Diamando was going to happen either, to be fair. And we've also got Anderson going to Man City. That feels like the most likely of all of them. And who was it? It was Mateta going to Chelsea. Yeah. But guys, those have been our 1 January transfers to win your side the title. Let us know what you guys thought of our suggestions in the comments down below. Let us know which one you think is most likely. Other clubs as well. Put your January wish list for your club as well. Put it in the comments. Matisse, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Pleasure.
Once again. You've been absolutely brilliant as ever. If people have enjoyed watching you, which they no doubt have, where can they find you?
MAH on YouTube. Very simple, 3 letters. You'll find all my content there.
He's going into sort of podcast host realm as well, man.
We're trying our best. So much to learn. I have to chat to Smithy.
Yeah, no, you've nailed it so far. Thanks very much to Mikey as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.